Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we were in the sugya of Ma'amer on Ein Gimel base, and I think the last time we dealt with the first issue in the sugya, which is that of Ein Imor Elo B'Gedulei Karka, the Imor, whether Imor is or isn't with Gedulei Karka. We saw Machlokas Rava and Abaya as to whether Molach Konif Milcha Milchasa, collecting salt from the evaporation pools is a chayiv or not. The Pashtus Abaya holds Ein Imor Elo B'Gedulei Karka, and Rava argues on that. However, we saw that the Rambam paskins that Ein Imor Elo B'Gedulei Karka, and arguably that's because one explanation may be because even Rava agrees that Imor is only with Gedulei Karka, but he holds that salt is called Gedulei Karka because salt in generally is hewed from the ground. And we discussed that last time. I think we also discussed what would be the discussion about whether something is only chayiv if it's Gedulei Karka or not. And we saw the language of the Rif, who says it depends on whether it's derech, imor, bekach, and we also spoke about the Rambam and Rambam and the Svar in general, that somewhere as you move from choresh and koitza, which is clearly a melacha in the ground, to bishul and afir, which is clearly a melacha in the food, at some point the melachas make a transition from one to the other. Now, there's a separate discussion in the posting, and there's really actually three topics to talk about in terms of the parameters of imor. The first topic is whether Imor is only with Gedulei Karka or not, which we've already spoken about. The second, they're all related, but the second related topic is whether Imor is only b'mokum Gedulei. And the third related topic is Ein Imor Acha Imor, the idea of Imor after Imor. And they're all somewhat conceptually linked, but not identical. And on the sheets, I hope I gave, we pretty much did the first page of the sheets. We saw the Gemara in Shabbos, and we saw our Gemara, we saw the Rambam, we saw the Meiri and the Shivas Rambam and Rambam. Yeah, so the next Gemara I printed in red is a Gemara in Beit Tzadaf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. There's really two or three Gemaras actually that I wanted you to see, and all of the Gemaras seem to be a raya to another principle, that Ma'amer is only b'mokum gedulei. Ma'amer is only in the place in which it grew. So first of all, there's Gemara in Beit Tzadaf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, which I printed. In which a Mishnah the Mishnah says, that you can bring in blocks of woods, and Tosfos says, why isn't this an av melacha? This is the question that Tosfos asked. He says it should be ma'amer if you gather in the woods, and he says that lo shaykh imor elo b'makom shegedolim sham. It's only relevant to have imor in the place where they grew, as is provable from Perek Klal Gadol. Does anyone have any suggestions about what Tosfos' raya is from Perek Klal Gadol? What's Tosfos' raya? Tosfos says a principle. Tosfos, again, the Mishnah in Beitzah says you can gather wood in. You can gather blocks of wood from your courtyards where you have scattered firewood, and you can gather it in on Yom Tov we're talking about to use. Now, Tosfos asks, surely this is the melacha of Ma'amer. Tosfos says no, because Ma'amer only applies when it's b'mokum gedulei, in the place where it grew. Says Tosfos, the proof for this is the Gemara in Shabbos, quite remarkable Tosfos. He says there's nuchach from Shabbos, Daf Ein Gimel base, where you see that Ein Imor Elo B'Gedulei Karka.
Is it just that it's the kanif milcha mi melachta? If you were to have, or if you were to have it anywhere else, if you were just have it on your kitchen table and gather it up, then that doesn't seem to be the situation we're talking about. The fact that he has the extra words in our Gemara of where you are that you're gathering the salt implies it's only there and not just anywhere.
That is absolutely right. It's a remarkable diuk. It's not diuk that would have occurred to me in 1,000 years. Tosfos Medayik, the konif milchasa. You're gathering in salt from the evaporation pools. Tosfos Medayik, why does it say you're gathering in salt from the evaporation pools, and why not just say you're gathering in salt if you spill salt on your kitchen table and you gather it in, then you also transgress the law of the chiyuv of melaches imor. So Tosfos Medayik mi milchasa, and the melacha of imor is only because you're gathering it in from the place where it grew. Remarkable Tosus. So this is one of the rayos in the sugya.
I just had a question. Can I just ask a question on that on the Beitza? Why is it malacha anyway? Isn't that? I thought ochel nefesh, shouldn't it be under ochel nefesh? I know the first two are not, but after that, I thought a lot of the melachot would be allowed anyway on Yom Tov because of ochel nefesh. So why would it be a problem anyway with mama on Yom Tov?
Yeah. I didn't actually print this. The Ran gives a different answer. The Ran says because of Eichel Nefesh. He says that's the reason for the allowance. Tosus doesn't hold to that. Tosus holds that it's too early in the process. There's a lot of discussion around this. At what point does the allowance of Eichel Nefesh click in? It may be actually connected in a sense to our previous discussion. At what point is the melacha considered to be a melacha in the Eichel as opposed to a melacha in the ground or in the preparation for the Eichel? So when you're doing koitzer, it's not melachas Eichel Nefesh because you're doing it in the tree and the fruit growing on the tree. You're not doing it in the food. So at what point does it shift to the het of Eichel Nefesh applying? Is itself a machlokas? The Ran, I chose not to print the Ran, but the Ran goes down that pathway. The Ran says the language of the Ran is he says by Yom Mutter, he says tzorech achila chosh is nechshav tzorech achila, and therefore it would be mutter. But Tosus doesn't hold on that answer. Tosus holds that Eichel Nefesh is insufficient to explain it, and therefore Tosus says the answer is because it's not makom gedulei. So this is one sugya. There's a second Gemara in Beit Tzadaf Lamed Gimel on the base where you see a similar thing. The Gemara says Tanu Rabbanon Megav Min Achotza Madlik Shekol Masha B'Chotza Muchanhu Uvav Sheliasa Tziboyin Tziboyin. And the Gemara says, "Mechzi the Kamachnif L'Mochel Yom Achrina." So this is talking about gathering in, and again you see the same idea that the Gemara says the only reason you're not allowed to do it is because it looks like you're gathering in wood for another day, and therefore you've got issues of hachana from Yom Tov to Shabbos. And there the Ran says, since you see that the only reason for the Issa is because it looks like you're gathering them for tomorrow, and you don't say it's because of Ma'ameh that it's not allowed. He says this is a raya for the same principle that you're not chayiv ma'ameh unless you are malakit it b'makom she'godol shom. So again, you see the same idea that the Rishonim say that it's only when you do imor in the makom in the place where it grew. There's also I hope I printed a Kasef Mishnah. Did I print this Kasef Mishnah over here? Oh no, I printed it in the original from the same Ramosha Cohen.
Yeah.
The Kasef Mishnah brings from also there on the Rambam. This is in Source 7, a very important Rambam which we should learn together. The Rambam says, "Makabit devela va'osam menu igul v'shenokav ta'enim v'hichnes hachevel b'hem asheniskaps guf echod." So the Rambam is talking about two sorts of ma'ameh. Either ma'ameh where you gather together a bunch of dates and you press them into they're sticky fruits. So you sort of press them into a mass, or you thread a string through them and bind them together. He says this is a tolda of ma'ameh and you're chai for it. So on that, on the Rambam, I brought from Moshe Cohen Meluniel, who says this is only where you gathered them if they fell off the tree at that point. He says if you gathered them in the house, not, because we see in Masechet Beitzah, in Masechet Yom Tov, that there's no Issa Ma'ameh unless it's Mimokim Gedulei. So basically what we're seeing so far is a Tosus and a Ran, and a Moshe Cohen of Luniel, who all learn that you're only chayav for Melechas Ma'ameh if you are Ma'ameh b'Mokim Gedulei, if you gather it where it fell off the tree. What did everyone think about this Rambam, this Moshe Cohen on the Rambam in Source 7, Hilchos Shabbos Perek Ches Halacha Vav, where the Rambam says that you're chayiv if you string it together, and Moshe Cohen says it must be only when it's b'makom gedulei.
Well, we have this Rambam who's talking about in the Chatzer that about if you do it as ka'uvda dechol and you press them together, it's going to be asur to do it there. So I think that would be a problem in explaining the way of Rav Moshe Cohen, because he's implying that it's going to be permitted if you do it in your Chatzer.
Which Rambam are you talking about here?
It would be the later Rambam.
Perik Kaf Aleph, Halacha Yud Aleph.
Yes, I think that's the one. Yes, אבל לא ייתן לא לתוכתיו, לא לתוך הגובה, כדרך שהוא עושה בכל, שאם יעשה כדרך שהוא עושה בכל, שמא יחבשן בידו בתוך הגובה. So the reason.
True, but what does the Rambam say at the beginning? The Rambam there says more than that, Paul. He says, "Medabik perius achi asa guf echod, you're chayv mishum ma'ameh."
Yes.
So the Rambam says you're even chayv mishum ma'ameh. Never mind uvta dechol. The Rambam says you're chayv mishum ma'ameh if you gather perius and you stick them together. Yeah. So I would suggest that what we have over here is a Tosus and a Ran who says that you're only chayav b'mokum gedoloi. You have a Rambam that twice doesn't mention this condition of mokum gedoloi. And Moshe Cohen Miloniel tries to squeeze us into the Rambam. The Rambam just says, if we look at the Rambam, Perek Ches Halacha Vav, or we look at the Rambam that Paul referenced in source 10, the Rambam doesn't mention a word about that only being the Mokum Gedoloi. Nowhere does the Rambam say that you're only chayv from Melachos Ma'ameh if you do it the Mokum Gedoloi. Moshe Cohen says the Rambam must mean it's the Mokum Gedoloi, because it's not Mokum Gedoloi, then it can't possibly be that you're chayv. But the Rambam doesn't mention that. So it seems to me that this is a forced reading in the Rambam to argue that the Rambam learns that you're only chayv if it's makom gedoloi, and what we have here is a machlokes rishonim. The Rambam learns that you're chayv even if it's shelo b'makom gedoloi, and Tosfos and the Ran learn that you're only chayv if it's makom gedoloi. What would be the machlokes? Why would it be that the Rambam would hold that you are chayv even shelo b'makom? Is everyone with me? Do you agree with me that the Rambam in Soul 7 doesn't mention the condition of Mokum Gedoloi, right? The Moshe Cohen is pushing this in and saying you're only chayv when it's in the place where it grew. But in the Rambam, you don't see such a condition. The Rambam doesn't mention that you're only chayv if you did ma'ameh in the place where it grew. So this seems to me I can't hear you, Paul. Sorry, you're muted. I can't hear you, Paul. You're muted.
Yes, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry. The Rambam is not saying you're chayev in the Chatzer. Is he saying it's asur in the Chatzer?
The Rambam in source in Perek Ches Halacha Vav says that you're chayev if you stick them together. The Rambam in Perek Kaf Aleph is a little difficult. The Rambam there says clearly you're chayev mishum ma'ameh, and then he says therefore you have to be careful.
Exactly.
When if peiros scatter around your chotzer, then you only gather them one by one and eat them. Then he says you shouldn't put them in a basket.
In case, yeah.
In case you end up pressing them together, and then it will be imur. Yeah. And the Rambam implies that if you do press them together, even in the courtyard, then you'd be chayv. And that's why there's a gezerah, if you like, not to gather them together, even in a chotzer.
The collecting them together only, if you don't press them together, is going to be asur.
That's correct. So we see two chiddushim in the Rambam, and I was going to come on to the second chiddush in a minute. Chiddush number one in the Rambam is that twice he says that you are chayiv for collecting scattered fruit. In the first Rambam, the one that Moshe Cohen comments on, he just says if you gather together devela and you press together the fruits, you're chayiv. He doesn't mention any condition about this only being in the place where they grow. Moshe Cohen adds in this condition, but it's not mentioned in the Rambam. In the second Rambam, in Perek Chof Aleph, Halacha Yud Aleph, the Rambam says more than that. So the Rambam says explicitly, he says if you have peiros which scattered in the courtyard, so this isn't the Mokum Gedoloi. The tree is not in the courtyard. They are fruit which have been brought in from outside, and now they scatter in the courtyard. Says the Rambam, if you press them together, you will be chayev. Therefore, you can gather them one by one and eat them, but don't gather them and put them in a basket in case you come to press them, and then you'll end up being chayev. In which case, we see two chiddushim from the Rambam. Number one, the Rambam lechor is mefurish, not like Moshe Cohen, and the Rambam holds that you are chayev even when you gather things shelo b'makom gedoloi. Number one. Number two, the Rambam distinguishes between merely gathering things and pressing them into a bundle, and seems to say you're only chayev if you press them into a bundle, not if you just gather them in the same basket.
Does Moshe Cohen comment on that second Rambam?
Not as far as I could see, no.
And the way he comments on the first Rambam, he was seen to be implying that it's just taken for granted that that's what everyone holds. And Rambam doesn't say it either way, does he?
That is correct. So what's happening here is a classic story in which a Rishon reads the Rambam and is unable to read the Rambam outside his own framework. So Moshe Cohen can't consider the possibility that the Rambam says that there's imor even shelo b'makom gedoloi. Why can't he consider the possibility? Because of the sugyas and beitza that we've seen. But there are other answers to the sugya and beitza. It could be Yom Tov, and Yom Tov is different because of Eichel Nefesh. The Rambam will find a solution to that sugya. But Moshe Cohen can't conceive of that. Therefore, he just adds in a comment on the Rambam, which he says this can, or perhaps he's arguing on the Rambam. Who knows? But he's saying this can only be b'makom gedoloi. But we have to read the Rambam and see what the Rambam is saying. And in the Rambam, it's clear that the Rambam says even shelo b'makom gedoloi yochayev, and that's for two pieces of evidence. Number one, the Rambam doesn't say it, and number two, the Rambam's talking about nechotza. He's talking about fruits that scattered in the nechotza. That's the clearest possible scenario in which it's not makom gedoloi. Okay, so what do we make of all of this?
But he is saying that this putting together of the fruit is a tolda. It's not the av. The Rambam.
Right, but why is it tolda?
Because it's domed, I suppose.
Right, because you're not doing it's not the same as sheaving, right?
Yeah.
You're not gathering stalks of wheat into a haystack. You're pressing fruit together. Yeah. So it's only a tolda, that's correct. But the Rambam says that this is even shelo b'makom gedoloi. So there's two ways to go in the Rambam. The first way to go in the Rambam is that the Rambam holds that you're only chayiv from ma'ameh, like your second diuk, you're only chayiv from ma'ameh if you bind things together. So we've mistranslated. I kept on merging, and because I didn't want to focus on this because we weren't up to this, how to translate the word ma'ameh. In the Rambam's language, without the Rambam, is ma'ameh gathering or is the Rambam ma'ameh sheaving? One way to read the Rambam is that the Rambam is saying that ma'ameh is only sheaving. In other words, only when you are binding things together. If you just put things together when they're not bound together, that's not melachas ma'ameh. What would the logic of this be? Because a malacha has to be something creative, it has to be creating something new. Why am I creating new? If I'm just gathering things together, that's not a malacha. What's creating something new is I gather things together which are now bundled together, and now I have a bundle which I can I can transport and move around. So I gather all the great stalks together, and now I can move them around and do things with them. They're somehow tied together. And that's the next stage in the production process. This would be one way of reading the Rambam, in which case the Rambam is saying a general principle that ma'ameh is only when you actually create something new. In other words, they're bound together. A second possibility in the Rambam is that the Rambam holds there's a chiluk, and this is a very beautiful and important point. The Rambam holds there's a chiluk between whether I'm doing ma'ameh in the makom gidol or not in the makom gidol. What would be the logic of why you're only chayiv for melachas ma'ameh in the makom gidol? In other words, let's just understand what this means. If I have fruit scattered around a field and I gather the fruit together, I'm chayiv because of ma'ameh. I now take all these fruit in a basket, I carry them into my courtyard, an accident happens, the basket falls over, and all the fruit gets scattered again. And suddenly I'm not chayiv from ma'ameh, because it's not makom gidol. How would that make a difference? Again, it's not enough just to learn from the melachas HaMishkan. We can't say because in the Mishkan they were gathering where it was b'makom gidol, therefore I'm only chayiv makom gidol. How on earth can it make a difference, the ground that the fruit is sitting on, whether I am chayiv for the melacha or I'm not chayiv for the melacha? What would the logic be of why it should make a difference?
Well, the logic is that you've taken it from its source and you've made it into something, a useful product. I'm ignoring the fact that it's what was done in the Mishkan, but it's the chain of food production, if you like. If you then have an accident, that's a complete, you could have a million accidents, or, it's a seminal event, shall we say, that when you gather it together in the field, or directly, I'm probably not explaining it very well.
No, I think what you're saying is correct. I think you're in the right direction. The logic is that this isn't part of, let's put this on hold. Let's put this on hold, and I want to share one more Maramakum with you. And this is Maramakum of the
as well, haven't we? Because the Tosfot read is saying it's even bishat tilishata. So it's not just at the place it was growing, but also at the time that it was growing. So
who are you quoting that from?
That's the Tosfot read in quote 9.
Excellent, and that was the next thing, the next Maramakum I wanted to look at.
Sorry, I butted in.
No. I'm delighted. Oh, sorry, I'm absolutely delighted. And this is what I wanted to have a look at now. The next source to understand this logic. There is another Gemara which is difficult, which also seems to be a problem here. And this is a Gemara in Masechet Shabbat. Daf Kuf Mem Gimel on the base. I'm trying to see. I hope I printed this this Gemara here in the source sheet. The Tosfos Rid references this. Yes, at the bottom of page 2. Tonu Rabbanon, Nispazru lo Peiros, Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Mem Gimel on base. Nispazru lo Peiros b'chotzer, melachot al yad v'yad v'oichel, aval lo teich hasol v'lo teich hachuppah, shelo yasek derech she'osa b'chol. So this is the Gemara, which is the source of the Rambam that Paul mentions that we saw in Perek Kaf Aleph. So the Gemara says that if the Peiros scatter in the courtyard, one can gather them one by one, but not put them into the kuppah, into the sal, because in the way that you do in the weekday. So what does Gemara mean that you shouldn't do it in the way that you do it in the weekday? So either this is a question of uvda l'chol, you're somehow doing it in a weekday manner, or and that's what Tosfos says. Tosfos says asiri mishum uvda l'chol. That's the Tosfos that I printed on the top of page 3. Or like the Rambam says that this is a gezerah in case you come to press it. But l'chora, the Gemara is mefurish, not like this Gemara should have been brought by the Rishonim as another raya for the principle that there's only imor b'mokum gedurei karka. Why didn't the Gemara bring that? Why didn't the Rishonim bring this as a proof for the concept that there's only imor b'mokum gedurei karka? And the answer to the question is because the Tosfos Rid in source 9, the Tosfos Rid on Al Sugya says another principle, and the Tosfos Rid says that tshuva ein ma'ameh elu b'shas tirishosim in a karka shezehu tchilus lekutoi. He says if they're already been collected and now they scatter, then this isn't ma'ameh. In other words, a new halachic principle that ein imur acha imur. There's no imur after once you've done imur already. That's how it's quoted in the halachic literature. There's no imur after you've done imur already. Now this again is a very difficult svara to understand. With bishul, there's a rule ein bishul acha bishul, but there's a logic to it. Once the fruit has been taken from being raw to being cooked, so in bishul acha bishul, I've already done the melacha. What difference does it make if I'm avashel it again? But why should there be ein imur acha imur? Surely I've unraveled the melacha by scattering it, and now that I regather it and I'm redoing the melacha again. So why shouldn't I be able to do the melacha again and again and again? And the answer to the question, I think, is Max's svara, which Gary was quite correct to draw our attention to the Tosfos Rid in order to understand. What this is telling us is that imur is part of the production process. The Lomdus says that imur is the question bothering the Rishonim is in what way is imur a melacha? What am I changing in the world? How are things different post imur to pre imur? Every melacha has to be moving me somewhere along in a creative act that there's something new in the world that didn't exist previously. And the Rishonim's answer to the question is, even though there's no change in the physical object, this is not like bishul. In bishul, I take something from raw to make it cooked. In charisha, I take unplowed ground and it's now plowed. In zoreah, I take unsown seeds and they're now sown. In dosh, I'm threshing. I'm extracting the product from its casing. Something new is happening. But in imur, what's happening? And the answer to the question is the reason why ein imur acha imur and ein disha acha disha. What's happening is that I'm moving it along the production process, that it is now in a usable setting to take it into the next stage of the production process, which will be the beginning of the separation of the grain from the stalks. And therefore it has to be makom geduloi, and therefore, as the Tosfos Rid says, ein imur acha imur. Because it only makes sense, there's only a constructive achievement in the melacha if it moves it along in the production process of preparing it for the next stage. It's a bit like, forgive this mashal, it's a bit like moichek al malas lichtov. The mechika is a melacha if it prepares the paper in order to make the paper fit for writing. So the imur is what makes the stalks ready for the next stage of the production process. And therefore I'm only chayiv in the melacha if there's a change in the line of the production process. If this lomdus is correct, and I think Max, this is what you were saying, then we can also understand the Rambam. Yeah. Because it's possible that the Rambam also would then agree that the imur is only b'mokum geduloi. Because note the care, and someone asked, what was Rav Moshe Cohen thinking in his reading of the Rambam? Note the care of how the Rambam says it. The Rambam says that if I just gather it into a basket, I'm not chayiv. I shouldn't do it. Why? As the Gemara says, because it looks like I'm doing it the way I'm doing it on Chol, which the Rambam learns doesn't mean uvta to Chol, just it's a vachtik, it's not a Shabbos-tik type activity. The Rambam says it's a gezerah in case I come to press the fruit. Clear in the Rambam that if I create a devela, if I bind the fruit together into a new product, or I string them together, then I'm chayev even shelo b'makom gedoloi. In which case maybe, and the Rambam says this is a tolda of the Av, in which case maybe the Rambam learns there's a dual way of doing the melacha over here. If I merely gather it, then the only way it can be a melacha is, and this is the Av melacha, is because I'm making it, moving it a stage in the production process. And therefore for this, maybe the Rambam would agree that I'm only chayiv b'makom gedoloi, and I'm only chayiv, there's no chiyuv of imo acha imo. However, there's another scenario of ma'ameh, and this is the scenario where I'm creating something new. Because beforehand I had scattered fruits, and now I've got pressed fruits. They're now bound together, they're strung together in a string, or they're pressed. In which case they're more usable, they've become a packaged entity. And the Rambam says this is a told of imo, and this would apply even shelo b'makom gedoloi, or even imo acha imo. So with each melacha I need to ask myself, what am I achieving? What's happening in this melacha? If the melacha is only because it's moving it along the production process of Sidura, the pasta, whatever it may be, then that only makes sense as per the Rishonim, the Tosfos written Tosfos, if I'm doing it b'makom gedoloi like Tosfos says and the Ran says, or ein imo acha imo like the Tosfos Rid says. However, if I'm making a change in the product, I'm actually binding them together rather than merely gathering them together, then that would make sense even shelo b'makom gedoloi and even by imo acha imo, because I'm actually making a change in the product itself, from the perspective of the product, not just from the perspective of the farmer who's getting it into a more usable form. We have other examples of melachos like this, and maybe a classic example of this is hotzah. And I don't want to go into, again, I said the challenge of learning Masechet Shabbat is always not trying to learn the whole of Shabbos in one go. But the melacha of hotzah, of moving something from a shus yochid to a shus rabim, is a difficult melacha to understand. There's no change in the object itself. Nothing changes in the object whatsoever. So what exactly is the melacha? I'm changing its location. So one way of understanding this is, and here I'll introduce new terminology, this isn't a melacha mitzad the chayfetz, it's not a change from the chayfetz's perspective, from the object's perspective, nothing has changed, but it's a melacha mitzad the gavra. It's a change in terms of the person, the usability of the object, because I've now got it moved in a more usable form. Now the distinction is subtle, because a product which is more usable is a change in the object itself. But with ma'ameh, what links these discrete particles? I had the same stalks before as I have afterwards. They're simply now located next to each other rather than apart. How does something new come into existence by them being next to each other instead of being apart? The answer is in the production process, this is something new. It's now gathered together, which I can then go and do the subsequent melachos to. However, in terms of the human usability of it, however, that would only make sense b'makom gedoloi. When it's not b'makom gedoloi, there has to be a structural change to it. There has to be a change mitzad the chayfetz from the perspective of the object itself, and that would only be when the objects are bound together.
I know in the Ramban has a logical reason for explaining why the Gemara refers to chatzer and not babayit. So that's an explanation in relation to borer. Is there any reason that that one could imply that the Rambam or others have in relation to the Gemara specifically mentioning chatzer rather than anywhere else?
Not that I know of. No. I think it's just that's the normal case or something like this.
I see.
Yeah.
There's no indication from them then that the rule babayit would be different. That's right.
No, I don't think there would be a sorrow in that. I brought the Ramban simply to show that there's a variety. Yeah. The Gemara is a very unclear Gemara, and you can learn the Gemara in a variety of ways. The Ramban, you are correct, learns we're not even talking here about ma'ameh, we're talking about boreh. It's a completely different melacha. I only brought that to show that none of these Gemaras are knockout blows for the Rambam or the Rishonim that choose to argue on this. In brief, we're not left with an ironclad Gemara. We're left with three sugyas, really. The sugya in Kuf Mem Gimel and Shabbos, the sugya in Beit Lamed Aleph, and the sugya in Beit Lamed Gimel. Each of them implies the same school of thought, that in Imo Elo B'Gedolei Kak, in Ma'amacham Amen, and B'Makom Gedolei, but none of them are clear. The difference between the sugyas could be because we're talking about Yom Tov, it could be because we're not even talking about Ma'ameh, we're talking about Borah. These are very, very unclear sugyas. And we don't have the ability to go into them. We're learning our sugi, we're not learning other sugyas, but simply to be aware that it ends up a big machlokas was shown in there for. To summarize, the simplest reading of Tosos is explicit. There's a rule of ein im or elo b'mokim gedoloi. The Tosos Rid is explicit. Ein ma'ame acha ma'ame. The Rambam, on face value, doesn't hold of either of these principles. He doesn't mention them. But the Rambam does say something else, that you need a change to occur in the object itself. They need to be bound together. Either this is because the Rambam holds as a general rule that the melach is only when they're bound together, or the Rambam holds that when you're not doing it b'mokim gedoloi, then it needs to be bound together. These are the two opinions.
Does the Meiri have a subtlety where that he doesn't say b'mokim gedulo, he says b'mokim katsira? Is that a slight variation? If you think that's the same thing?
I didn't notice that chiluk. I don't know. It's a good point. I mean, mathematically and geographically, it's the same thing, but I don't know if the lomdus is a bit different because it's a different emphasis.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
Could you argue the Tosfot Rid is saying, I think Josh actually made this point in our Chavruta, that actually there is a change to the Chayfetz as well, when he says in Makabet Shibolim Machavei Akotze the Ose Oton Omer. You're actually changing the shame of the thing from Shibolim into Omer. So there is actually a Maaseh taking place.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point. And that is correct. There could be a change in the object itself because of its functionality. Very, very important point. Yeah, thank you for that. I should have mentioned B'Shem Omro, the very important posek who says this reading in the Rambam that I just told you, and who argues that Imor B'Mokum Gedoloi, you don't need to stick them together or bind them together, according to the Rambam. But Imor Shaloi B'Mokum Gedoloi, not in its place of growing, you do need to bind them together. The posek that says that is the Nishmas Avram, better well known as the Chaye Odom. The Nishmas Odom. Chaye Odom is Rabbi Avram Danziger, and he wrote one of the most important halachic works of the last couple of centuries. He was the Mechutin with the Vilna Gaon, and he wrote the very famous work Chaye Odom. In the note there, the Nishmas Odom, in Klal Yud Gimel, he writes this chiluk. This is his reading of the Rambam, that the Rambam holds that Shaloi B'Mokim Gedoloi only when you bind it together, B'Mokim Gedoloi even where you don't bind it together. So we'll stop there for today. I'd like to finish the sugya on Sunday, so if you haven't yet managed to do so, please go through these Mara Makomas. And I'd like to try and finish off on Sunday. I printed a few of the Mishnah Brewers and Aruch HaShulchans on the topic, and I would also like to go through some practical scenarios like toys that get scattered in your dining room and things like that, whether you can or can't gather them together, and how to apply some of the principles learned to that. So I'll stop there, and I'll wish you all a good evening. Thank you very much.
Do you have any more Mari Makomot for us to have a look at? Because
I haven't. I don't. Did you manage to go through the Mishnah Berurah and Aruch HaShulchan and everything? Because I'll send a couple of extra on. So those are the main things in this again.
Thanks so much.
There's
Okay,
the deer
okay,
shoe. The deer shoe's got things on the Mishnah Brura.
Okay, so I'll try and scan them, or if you can scan them, we can put them on lockdown.
I don't know. There's a few things I saw.
Okay,
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.